Do you ever look into your dog's eyes and wonder, what is this furry little creature thinking? Is he reading my face? Is he reacting to my tone? Is he trying to tell me something? Like, what's going on in his head? Well, science has the answer, and it may change the way you see your little furry buddy. A huge study recently compared the intelligence of 550 dogs, 100 toddlers, and 100 chimpanzees. And guess what they found? A dog's social intelligence scores on the exact same level as a human toddler. Yeah, that's right. Dogs actually think more like toddlers than monkeys do. So let that sink in. Your German Shepherd or Labrador, your little rescue mix, they don't need to be bribed or dominated. They need to be guided like a small child. So I've been training dogs for 17 years. This video comes straight from my new book, Dog Training Simplified: Why Most Pet Obedience Fails and How to Get Real Results. And that isn't the only behavioral study linking dogs and toddlers. So let's talk about a name you need to know. Dr. Stanley Coren. He's a psychology professor and one of the world's leading canine behavior experts. In his book, The Intelligence of Dogs, Dr. Coren shares that most dogs understand around 165 words, and the smartest dogs closer to 250 words. Dogs can count up to 4 or 5, and they can even do basic math. But Dr. Coren's biggest takeaway? Dogs think like a 2 to 2.5-year-old child. And that's coming from one of the top experts in the field. So what does this all mean for you, the dog owner? Well, let's break it down. Dogs are like toddlers when it comes to 3 things. 1, communication. Dogs can learn words, but they rely far more on tone, timing, and body language. So if your trainer uses hand signals, then your whole family must use hand signals. If your trainer uses a loud tone, your whole family must too. Otherwise, the dog won't listen. That's why at Tip Top Canine, we teach 1-word commands, followed by a pause, and always delivered in a calm tone. This helps make the transition from a professional trainer to mom and dad much easier. 2, problem solving. Dogs are natural experimenters. If something works, they'll do it again. Right? If it doesn't, they'll try something else to get what they want. So I have kids. If I let my kids do whatever they wanted, they'd eat candy and watch TV all day. And basically, dogs are the same. Chewing on your shoes or chasing that squirrel gives them a dopamine hit. It feels good and they just want to do it, right? That's why you need reliable obedience tools like 100% come when called or a reliable place and stay command. Obedience gives you the control you need when your dog's instincts kick in. Number 3, cognition. Dogs have a short memory. They have a limited focus and they need a lot of repetition. I mean, a lot. So whether those reps come from you, mom and dad, or the professional trainer, your dogs need repeated practice to truly learn. So how do you teach a dog? Well, the same way you teach a toddler. You're going to break things down into tiny chunks. You're going to lead by example and guide them into new behaviors. And then you're going to repeat it. Then repeat it again and again and again after that. Because based on the science, your dog isn't just being stubborn. They think like a toddler. If you want more help, grab my book, Dog Training Simplified, on Amazon, or watch our next video on why most dog trainers fail. I know lots of trainers. They're hardworking and passionate, but I want to pull back the curtain and show you the top 3 reasons most dog training fails. You paid the dog trainer. You followed their plan. And then a few weeks later, your dog's right back to ignoring you. Does that sound familiar? If you've ever spent money on dog training only to feel like it didn't stick, you are not alone. In fact, after 17 years in this industry, I can tell you, most dog training doesn't fail because you, the owner, did something wrong. It fails because the dog trainer you hired didn't have the right systems. Too many new dog owners get burned, and then they're left thinking that their dog is stubborn and their dog is untrainable or they're a bad client, when really they got stuck with a trainer who was using a scattered or outdated approach. And that's why I made this video. This video is taken from part of my book on why most pet obedience fails and how to get real results. But let's walk through the 3 biggest reasons most dog trainers don't deliver. That way, you'll know how to not get caught in the middle. Reason number 1, no documented dog training system. Most dog trainers, they don't have a standardized method for training dogs, which means they wing it. That means every dog gets something different. And if there's more than one trainer involved in the company, sometimes it's total chaos. I had a client once who went to a group class where there were 3 different instructors teaching 3 different methods at the same time in the same room. You think those dogs were confused? Yeah, you better believe it. But you can spot the confusing dog trainer a mile away. Just look at their bio. If they've trained under 5 or 6 different people, that's a red flag. The more names they list, the more they're mixing and matching random techniques and have no consistent philosophy. And then when they pass this erratic approach onto their team, it's like this chaotic, crazy game of telephone where every trainer is doing something different. But at Tip Top Canine, we don't do that. Every trainer at Tip Top works from the same training manual, the same process, and the same systems. We've used it on thousands of dogs. And here's the thing, when you do the same thing the right way over and over and over again, you get really good at it. Now on the flip side, some dog trainers call themselves balanced, right? They use prong collars, e-collars, shock collars, treats, clickers, slip leads, vests, toys, like the list goes on. They use everything possible. But here's the problem. That doesn't create balance for the average dog owner. It creates confusion. Real balance is about 3 things: structure, predictability, and stability. That's what gives pet owners clarity and dogs confidence. Now, sure, there are professionals out there who can use the balanced approach with 5 different tools, but do you think they can train my mom how to do that? No way. Can using all those tools work? Sure, absolutely, it can. Dogs are smart. You can teach a dog 100 different ways. But at Tip Top Canine, we are the pet obedience people for the everyday pet owner. Our locations work with the average pet owner who just wants a calm, obedient dog. The multi-tool approach, it might make sense in competitive dog sports, but for regular families, it's just not realistic or necessary. You don't need 5 tools to teach one command. You need one method that is consistent, teachable, and transferable, because that's what's going to get real results. Reason number 2, no client training system, right? So here's a little dirty secret nobody wants to admit. You are not just training dogs. You're training people. And if you don't have a clear system for teaching the owner, then the training falls apart the moment the owner grabs the leash. 10 years ago, I did a consult with a lady who just spent $3,000 with a local trainer. We'll call him Steve, right? Now, Steve had trained her 95-pound German Shepherd actually pretty well, but this lady was only like 105 pounds herself, and she couldn't physically replicate what Steve was doing. On top of that, she didn't have Steve's strong voice. So even though the dog was trained, the training didn't transfer. And I'll be real, Steve wasn't a bad trainer. I worked a few of his dogs, and they were actually pretty clear, and they actually knew what to do. They were trained. He just had no system for teaching humans how to do what he did. At Tip Top Canine, we have a documented owner training system. We focus on teaching our trainers how to coach people just as much as training dogs. Because without a client training system, nothing matters. If the owner doesn't learn, the dog doesn't change. Reason number 3, no business systems. This is where a lot of trainers crash and burn. Like they're good or they're even amazing with dogs, but they're terrible at running a business. And you might be like, why do I care about my dog trainer's business systems? Because if your trainer is stressed out, then your dog's going to be stressed too. When you're looking for a professional dog trainer, you want someone who has back office support. Dog trainers as a whole, they're hands-on people. So when your trainer has an office that answers their phones, runs their calendar, their ads, and so forth, you know that those dog trainers can actually focus on training your dog. So I know trainers who've spent thousands of dollars flying around to learn new techniques, but they still answer their own phones, they run their own Facebook ads, they're still checking their invoices at midnight. And I used to be that guy, right? Back in 2012, I only had 2 employees. I was working 60, 70 hours a week training dogs. I stayed up till like 2 a.m. a lot of nights reading marketing blogs. And I missed over $60,000 in customer payment plans because we were so busy. I was training so many dogs, training people. We had a 4-week wait list almost all the time. And then I just kept forgetting to run the card for the second half, or the other employee kept forgetting to run it. And in 2012, $60,000 was like $1 million, right? And guess what? I was a stressed out dog trainer. Why? Because I had no systems. So once we built real systems, we stopped missing calls, stopped missing payments, and we stopped burning out. You want a trainer with business systems, or they're going to be stressed out, and that stress is going to impact how they train your dog. So let's recap. Most dog trainers fail because they lack 3 systems: a documented dog training system, a teachable client training system, and scalable business systems. Most trainers and other brands, they're doing everything themselves: answering calls, scheduling clients, chasing payments, running ads, and then trying to train your dog on top of it. Even the most passionate dog trainers are going to burn out without systems. And when they burn out, it's the dog owner who just paid a lot of money that gets the poor results. In the next video, we're going to cover the 4 things that your dog trainer's obedience system must have. There are 4 tests that any real trainer should be able to demonstrate on the spot. Look, cool tricks are fun, but for most dog owners, there's a big gap between how much we love our dog and how much control we actually have over them in real life. So let me be clear, that gap is not your fault. Most of you watching this are not trying to become professional trainers. You just want a method that's clear, a method that's effective and can get results that you can count on. And that's exactly what we teach at Tip Top Canine. We help regular people get real control over their dog without spending years learning theory. This video, it's pulled straight out of my new book, Why Most Pet Obedience Fails and How to Get Real Results. Number 1, a trainer's system must work consistently, indoors, outdoors, and everywhere. And if your trainer's dog only listens in the backyard or in a training center, it's not really trained. It's like training a dolphin to do tricks in a tank and then expecting that dolphin to do the same thing in the open ocean. It's never going to happen. Most reward-only systems, they simply don't hold up once you leave a sterile place. If chasing the squirrel feels like winning the lottery and your treat's a dry biscuit, guess which one your dog's picking? Real obedience means your dog responds anywhere, not just when conditions are perfect. A real training system should work in the front yard, at the park, or when your dog sees a squirrel. If your trainer can't show you off-leash obedience with their dog in your front yard, their system isn't ready for real life. Number 2, a trainer's system must get results quickly. Most people don't hire a dog trainer when things are going well. They call when they're at their limit, when they're frustrated, stressed out, or flat out done. They need to see change soon, in days or weeks, not eventually. Your dog trainer should be able to show results fast. And I mean at the initial consult. Not perfection, but momentum. Because when a trainer starts producing results quickly, 2 big things happen. Owners like you start believing that they can actually do this, and your dog gains clarity and confidence faster. If I can't help a frustrated family start seeing change in the first few days, they may not stick with it. Quick results are mandatory. Number 3, a trainer's method must not rely on strength or dominance. You shouldn't have to be a deep-voiced alpha to handle your dog, right? A real-world training system should work just as well for a 9-year-old kid as it does a loud, confident trainer. Because here's the sad truth. If the dog only listens to a strong, dominant person, that's not training, that's just intimidation. Real obedience training works for all personality types. Number 4, a trainer system must be simple enough for the average person to repeat. Most of my clients, they're not trying to be full-time dog trainers. They just want their dog to behave, right? So if your dog trainer's method requires 5 different tools, hand feeding every meal, and hours of practice a week, that's not really pet obedience. That's a part-time job. Most people, they won't stick with it. Your trainer should be able to hand you a system that's clear and simple and repeatable. So if a 9-year-old can't do it, it's too complicated. I mean, my 7-year-old son can train my dogs. So what kind of system can do all 4? It's not pure positive reinforcement, and, it's really not old school punishment. The system that consistently delivers for everyday families, it's classical conditioning with an e-collar. And here's what that looks like. It's consistent, it's able to generate a response in all environments, it delivers quick results. Many times we get off-leash reliability within hours or even just days. It doesn't require strength. Kids and seniors, they can handle strong dogs after a trainer lays the foundation. And it's simple to use. Training transfers easily from the professional to the pet owner in just a few hours. But to give you the full picture, in the next video, we'll break down the dog training psychology that most people follow, starting with operant conditioning. Have you ever heard a dog trainer say something like negative reinforcement or positive punishment and thought, what the heck does that even mean? Here's the ultra simplified version. Positive reinforcement means reward. Negative reinforcement means timeout from something bad. Positive punishment means adding a punishment. And negative punishment means taking away something good. But that's just scratching the surface, right? This video is pulled straight from a chapter of my new book, Dog Training Simplified, Why Most Pet Obedience Fails and How to Get Real Results. Operant conditioning is just a fancy term for something that you probably actually already understand. You reward a behavior you want, and you probably get more of it. If you punish a behavior you don't want, well, you'll probably see less of it. That's operant conditioning. It's all about consequences. It's sometimes summed up as the carrot or the stick. Back in the day, right? If a horse didn't want to pull a cart, they really had two choices. Offer a carrot to encourage the horse to walk faster, or use a whip to discourage it from walking slowly. Basically, reward or punishment. But in 1937, a psychologist named B.F. Skinner took that basic idea of reward and punishment, and then he expanded it into a full behavioral system. Skinner said, hey, there's not just two approaches. There's actually 4 different ways to either increase or decrease an animal's motivation to do something. And he called his theory operant conditioning. He defined 4 quadrants that are based on whether you're going to increase or decrease a behavior. So let's break down the classic 4-quadrant chart used by most dog trainers or dog training books. You have positive reinforcement where you're adding something good to encourage a behavior. An example is if the dog sits, they get a treat, and then the behavior goes up because of that reward. With negative reinforcement, you remove something bad to encourage behavior. An example would be as a dog approaches an underground fence, he starts to get a beep and then a continuous shock. And then if he turns around, well, then the shock goes away. The behavior of moving away actually goes up because relief is rewarding. Both of those are called reinforcement because they're increasing a behavior. On the other side, you have positive punishment, which is adding something bad to discourage behavior. An example is the dog jumps and he gets squirted in the face with a water bottle. The behavior goes down because something unpleasant was added. With negative punishment, you remove something good to discourage behavior. A common example is the dog jumps, and so people turn around and ignore him. And they want the behavior to decrease because something good, which was love, is now removed. These are called punishments because they decrease a behavior. So that's where the 4 quadrants come from. But how does it apply to real dog training? It all started in a lab with something called a Skinner box. At the very base level, the Skinner box had a lever, it had a food dispenser, and an electric shock floor. There's a lot of other versions of it, but that's the base model. And Skinner, he didn't use dogs. He used rats, pigeons, and electric shock generators, right? He designed experiments to prove how his 4 quadrants worked in a controlled environment. So here's what each one of those tests look like, and we're going to break it down. So test 1 is positive reinforcement. Skinner takes the rat and he puts him in the Skinner box. And there's not much to do in there. It's a tiny box. So the rat just kind of wanders around. And after a while, he sees the lever and he kind of like messes with it. And if he hits it, then a food pellet comes out. And the rat goes, huh, that's cool. So he hits it again and another food pellet comes out. And he was like, all right. So he hits it and food, hits it, food, hits it, food. So he has a takeaway. If I hit the lever, I get food. In positive reinforcement, the behavior increases. So test 2 is positive punishment. So Skinner takes the rat, he puts him back in the Skinner box, but the rules have changed now, right? What he did is he hooked up the electric floor to the shock generator. So what happens is the rat goes, "Ooh, I love this box." He runs over, he hits the lever, and then he gets shocked out of his mind, right? He gets a big shock as soon as he does that. And the rat just goes, what is going on? So he pauses for a minute, he walks around, He walks up and he hits the lever again. Boom! Rat gets shocked. After a few of those, the rat has a magical takeaway. The rat goes, man, if I do this, I get a huge shock. And then the behavior that was just created, it now decreases and then it eventually stops. That is positive punishment. So test number 3 is negative reinforcement. The setup is the scientist hooks up the shock generator, but now instead of cranking it all the way up, he like puts it in the middle where it hurts, but it's not lightning bolts, right? So he goes, all right, little buddy, and he puts him in, but this time he starts with the floor electrified from the very get-go. So he puts the rat in, the floor is already electrified, and what does the rat do? Well, he freaks out, right? He freaks out, he runs around the tiny little box, and then he panics, he tries to climb the rolls. Eventually, he accidentally hits the lever, boom. The medium shock, it's all gone, it stops. The rat goes, all right, that was weird, right? He takes him out, he electrifies the floor, puts him back in, on top of a shock floor. After a while, the rat hits it a second time. Well, after a few of those, the rat runs straight to the lever and hits it, and he turns off the shock, right? He understands. His takeaway is, if I do this action, the pain stops. And that's how negative reinforcement increases a behavior. So test 4 is negative punishment. And it doesn't really work for dog training. I go into that in the next video. But for this video, I want to talk about it. So the setup is the scientist takes this little guy, right? And he puts him in the cage for a 4th time in the little Skinner box. And the rat goes in and he's probably cringing at this point, like, oh God, what's going to happen? But nothing happens. And all of a sudden a little food pellet comes out. And the rat goes, that's weird. And then another food pellet comes out. And then every 2 minutes, a food pellet comes out and the rat does nothing. There's no electric floor. There's no lever being hit for food. He gets free food every 2 minutes. And so the rat's like, okay, well, I don't really understand what's going on, but this is cool. And he gets curious. And so he goes, well, sometimes when I hit the lever, it's 50-50, bad things or good things. So he kind of cringes. I'm guessing he cringes. I'm making that up. But he hits the lever and then the food stops for 30 minutes. After a few times, our little buddy here learns, if I do this, my food goes away. So the behavior of lever hitting decreases now, not because something bad happens, but because he stops getting something good, or he gets a timeout from something good. But I'm a dog trainer, and dogs aren't rats. And the local park, it's not exactly a laboratory. So in this next video, we're going to deep dive into when the 4-quadrant model breaks down when it comes to real-world dog training and what to use instead. Trolls, I apologize for this video in advance. Don't hate me, but I gotta be real with people why their dog trainer is letting them down, even though their trainer's videos look good and their theory makes sense. So if you've ever searched for dog training advice, you've probably run across something called the 4 quadrants of operant conditioning. You might have even seen a chart like this. Charts like this get tossed around a lot, especially by dog trainers online. They look scientific and they sound impressive, but does it actually work in the real world for real people? Let's find out. I want to go over part of my book, Dog Training Simplified, where I expose the flaws of operant conditioning when it comes to real world behavioral issues. So what does operant conditioning say about handling intense issues like a border collie with a drive to hurt other animals? Well, let's walk through the 4 quadrants and see if the theory actually holds up for the average owner of a high drive dog. I mean, anything can work for a pro with unlimited time, right? All right, so we're going to use 4 tests. Test 1 is positive reinforcement, or the reward-based approach. In this approach, a treat-based trainer would teach Bosco to come when called and then reward him with something tasty, like some chicken or bacon or cheese. Obviously, Bosco loves cheese. So in the backyard or classroom, this is going to work pretty well, but once the herding dog sees cows, game over. His instincts fire up, and the thrill of chasing cows is just more rewarding than any treat you can give him. It's just not even close. And this is why you'll see most positive reinforcement trainers post their success videos in fenced yards or quiet rooms because their method shines in controlled spaces. But it breaks down the moment that you step out of that into the chaos of real life. So the bottom line is positive reinforcement can teach behaviors in sterile environments. But when instincts take over, man, the treats lose. Test 2, positive punishment. This is adding a punishment. In this scenario, a trainer might use a high-powered shock collar and the dog might get lightning bolts if he runs towards the cows. The goal of punishment is to add something unpleasant to stop or decrease the behavior. And sometimes this works, but unless it's really clear, it can backfire. Right? You can't sit down and Dr. Phil your dog and explain the consequences of Fluffy's actions to him. So your dog has to interpret those punishments for himself. And there are 3 possible interpretations that he could make. The first one is your dog could think, hey, when I chase cows, something bad happens and I should stop. Great. Problem solved. The second thing your dog could think now is cows are scary. Bad things happen around them and I better avoid cows. Well, now you've created a new problem, a cow phobia. And if this herding dog was bought as a herding dog, well, now that's a huge issue. The third is the dog could think, hey, when mom yells no, I get hurt. So if I hear mom yell no, I should run from mom. Well, now we've made things even worse. Bosco now fears mom and he runs from her and he still wants to chase cows. So just to recap, what are the 3 possible outcomes of punishment? Well, you could stop a behavior, you could create a phobia, or you could create a new problem. So 2/3 of the time, it could actually create a new issue. The bottom line is punishment can stop behaviors, but dogs don't process cause and effect like humans. If the connection is not crystal clear, punishment creates confusion and leads to new phobias and new problems. Test 3, negative reinforcement. This is the relief-based approach. Here, a dog trainer applies something unpleasant like maybe just a medium shock and then stops when the dog performs the desired behavior. So in the herding dog's case, a trainer might apply a continuous stimulation where it just keeps going and going as the dog chases cows. And then the moment the dog turns and stops chasing, boop, the continuous button stops. The message to the herding dog, if you stop doing what you're doing, pressure goes away. This quadrant can have the highest success rate of the 4 when it comes to stopping instinctual behavior like cow chasing. But, and that's a big but, it still comes with 3 big risks. Risk number 1, if your dog doesn't understand why the pain stopped, really it's just punishment in disguise. 2, if the pressure's too high, you can really crush your dog's attitude. And then 3, if the setup isn't controlled, well, you're going to create fear, confusion, and phobias. Here's an example of negative reinforcement gone wrong that most people have probably seen. Have you seen a dog run through underground fences and they learn to just take the shock and sprint past the boundary? They just take it. But then once they're outside, they don't come back home because they think, hey, if I come back home, I'm going to get zapped again. The dog knows there's a consequence in there. They're just not quite sure what the boundary is and the rules are. They understand there's a shock and a consequence, but they haven't tied it to leaving the yard. That's a big problem. The bottom line is negative reinforcement can be effective, but if it's misapplied, it can have the same harmful effects as punishment. Test 4, negative punishment, the timeout from something good approach. This involves taking away something the dog wants to reduce a behavior. So if a dog chases cows, the trainer brings him inside and puts him in a timeout. And he says, no fun for you since you're chasing cows. It sounds logical, but this approach doesn't work. A herding dog doesn't have the developmental reasoning to link I chased cows to I'm bored inside, right? Scientific studies show that timeouts are effective for human children aged 2.5 to 7 years old. But dogs don't fall in that range. If you saw my video on how dogs think, then you know they think like 2 to 2.5-year-old toddlers. They don't make that connection that my actions equal timeout inside. So the bottom line, timeouts and passive resistance might work for human kids that are older, but they don't work for dogs, especially dogs with instinctual drives. So what about balance training? What about mixing all 4 quadrants? Well, in theory, it sounds really good, but in practice, it often just stacks the confusion. And I'm not talking to a competition trainer. If you hand feed your dog every day for the last 2 years, unsubscribe from the channel. I'm talking to the average pet owner, right? I'm talking to someone who hasn't trained hundreds of hours. Rewards are going to fail when the dog's instincts kick in, right? It's just going to happen. And then punishment and negative reinforcement, it's going to fail if your dog doesn't understand exactly why something bad is happening. And then the negative punishment, well, that's not even really going to work at all. So when the average pet owner mixes all 4 methods, they just get a mix of results. And with a mix of results, they never trust their dog off leash. That's why at Tip Top Canine, we use classical conditioning with an e-collar. We use the e-collar to create a conditioned response, and it'll hold up under distractions. So stick around for my next video where we deep dive into classical conditioning. The magic of classical conditioning is this. It creates an automatic and involuntary response. It doesn't rely on logic or consequences. It taps into the subconscious. And that's what makes it powerful for building obedience. Classical conditioning goes back to the 1890s to a scientist by the name of Ivan Pavlov. For those of you who didn't pay much attention in science class, here's a quick refresher on the theory that he's really known for. His theory is food makes dogs salivate, food paired with a bell makes dogs salivate, and then if you layer that food and bell enough times, eventually the bell alone makes dogs salivate. This is basically his theory of classical conditioning. At first, the bell was meaningless. It was just a sound. But you pair it with food over and over. With dogs, classical conditioning just is connecting the dots. Now let's break this down a little deeper using a chart from my new book, Dog Training Simplified. So picture this. It's feeding time. You open the pantry. You grab the dog food bag. And before the food even hits the bowl, your dog's already drooling and doing a happy dance. In this case, the food is an unconditioned stimulus. It automatically triggers a response without any prior learning or training. And your dog's reaction? That's an unconditioned response. It's totally automatic. There was no training involved. Now imagine every time you feed your dog, you ring a little bell. At first, the bell means nothing. It's a neutral stimulus. It's just noise. But if you keep doing that, ding, dinner, ding, dinner, ding, dinner. Well, that's conditioning. If you keep doing that enough, one day you ring the bell and your dog drools, even without any food in sight. So at this point, the bell is just becoming a conditioned stimulus. And the drooling, that is now what's called a conditioned response. This is classical conditioning in action. But here's why it matters. Because your dog is actually learning all the time, just by linking experiences together. When you pick up the leash, that starts to mean a walk. When you jingle your car keys, it means you're leaving. And when you raise your voice, when you see your shoes all chewed up, that's communicating something too, right? So dogs are always connecting the dots. The question isn't if your dog is learning. The real question is, hey, what are you teaching? Now that you understand how classical conditioning works, in this next video, I'm going to show you how to use classical conditioning with a low-level e-collar to create a reliable obedience response that's not just learned, but it's actually hardwired into your dog's brain. Have you ever wondered why some dogs are confident and happy on the e-collar, and then others look confused or stressed and even shut down? The difference comes down to one word: clarity. So in this video, I'm going to explain how to use classical conditioning with the e-collar. We want your dog to actually understand what it means. Most people think e-collars are all about punishment. To be honest, I used to think that too, but that's not how we train at Tip Top Canine. Because when the e-collar is taught right, it becomes communication. Do you remember back in high school, the Russian scientist Pavlov who used food and bells to condition dogs to salivate? Well, I use the e-collar the exact same way Pavlov used food, and I use my voice the same way he used a bell. Just like Pavlov's dogs drooled at the sound of a bell, in obedience training, our goal is to create an automatic response to your voice. We start by conditioning your dog to respond to the e-collar. Then we pair that response with a verbal command. Eventually, your dog listens to your voice alone because it's been hardwired through conditioning. The power of classical conditioning is that it invokes an involuntary and automatic response. It bypasses the conscious mind, which makes it very powerful for obedience training. I want you to think of the e-collar like a gentle tap on the shoulder. So when somebody taps you on the shoulder, you just turn around, right? You didn't have to be taught to do that. It's automatic. It's not fear, it's not pain, it's just a natural response. If someone tapped you and you didn't respond, they'd probably tap you again, right? Maybe even a little harder. Well, that's exactly how we use the e-collar. When someone taps you, they just get your attention and your body physically moves. Well, the e-collar works the same way. It generates both movement and attention from the dog. Now I go deeper into this theory in my book, Dog Training Simplified, but this video should give you a quick intro into how we at Tip Top Canine train. But for those of you unsure about e-collar use, we use a professional grade e-collar that has an output similar to a medical grade TENS unit that you would find used at a physical rehab. Proper e-collar training is not about pain. It's a clear, repeatable signal. It's literally just this electronic tap on the shoulder that tells your dog to do something. So I want to go over our 5-step conditioning process, and then in the next video, you'll see me do this with my 4-month-old puppy Rooster. Step 1, I'm going to introduce the stim. At first, the e-collar stimulation, it means nothing to the dog. We just lightly tap at a very low level and introduce it, and I help the dog become aware of this sensation. This is how I find the lowest level that gets a reaction. Step 2, I shape movement with the leash. Next, I use the leash along with the e-collar to shape what the dog does when they feel that tap. Shaping is the process of breaking a new behavior down into smaller steps and then gradually guiding the dog toward the desired outcome. Step 3, pair the verbal command with movement. So once your dog starts associating how to move from the leash and the e-collar, that's when I add a verbal command. For example, I say come while tapping with the e-collar and then gently guiding the dog with the leash. This is where the conditioning begins. Step 4, I fade out the leash. So as the dog begins to respond to the command and the tap, I remove leash help. Now the dog's just responding to the command and the e-collar alone. Step 5, I make the behavior bulletproof. The last thing I do is I practice commands in different places, such as the park, neighborhoods, dog-friendly stores. I want to add distractions, new challenges, because I want to build real-world obedience. But here's the best part of classical conditioning, is that it transfers. Once you have a conditioned response, your dog doesn't care if it's my voice or yours. If you remember Pavlov in science class, once a dog was conditioned to a bell, it didn't matter who rang it. Pavlov's grandmother could come in and ring the bell, the dog would still salivate. That is called generalization. Generalization is why your dog obeys at boot camp and at home, even if your voice is a little different from your dog trainers. That's because of classical conditioning. In classical conditioning, we condition the brain. We don't just train a behavior. Now, I understand this is just theory, but watch the next video to see me apply this step by step with a 4-month-old lab. When I was writing my book, Dog Training Simplified, my editor said, "Hey, Ryan, I don't get it. What are you actually doing with the e-collar?" So I grabbed a dog and I showed him, and he said, "Whoa, Ryan, you need to put that on video." So in this video, I'm working with my 4-month-old lab puppy, and this is the first time he's ever been on an e-collar. I'm using Tip Top Canine's method of classical conditioning, where we're using 3 parts: the e-collar, the leash, and a verbal command. I use the e-collar as this gentle tap on the shoulder, just enough to generate some movement and attention from him. I use the leash to shape the response that I get from the e-collar. And then I use a verbal command. That's what I'm naming that response with. Now, we've gotten thousands of testimonials from this type of training from our clients all over the United States. But if you haven't watched our video on what is e-collar classical conditioning, go and check that one out first. Then come back and watch how we start a dog on the e-collar for the very first time. And if it clicks for you like it did for my editor, then go to our website, fill out a form, and get your first lesson for only $1 with your local Tip Top Canine. That way we can show you what we can do with your dog, hands-on, right in front of you. All right, so I'm gonna show you a dog that's never been on an e-collar before. This is Rooster, my pup. He just turned 4 months old last week. So let's get after it. So we're gonna show come and touch exactly like I showed my book editor with Rooster. He's never felt an e-collar before, never been on stim or anything. We've only done tricks, which you can see in some of our other YouTube videos. So I'm gonna start with come and touch. First thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna find his level on the remote. Slowly go up, okay.
I'm looking for a little bitty, okay, you see that? So it's about 15. You see his little bitty reaction, so I'm gonna literally start right there. So now I'm gonna use the leash. I'm gonna point it towards me. What? Hi. All right, come on. So I'm gonna go tap, 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 tap. Good job. As soon as he moves towards me, I stop tapping. Good job, buddy. Break, yes. Break's gonna be his release word. It's not gonna mean anything to him right now. Tap, tap. Oh, not sure if you did that one or not. Okay, break. So I'm just gonna lose him, let him get out to the end of the leash. Tap, tap, tap. Good job. You see him shaking? That's a little, he's a little unsure. Good job, break, because it's brand new. So tap, 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 tap. Good boy. This is all I'm doing in the beginning. Break. So I start just leash and tap. Tap, tap, tap. Good job. Nope. So tap, 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 tap. Good job, buddy. Good job. Break. What? So he's doing pretty good. Now I'm going to overlay leash, tap, and verbal command all at the same time. What? So come. Good job. Okay, so that was 15. Actually, so that was 20. So it got accidentally bumped up. So if he overreacts, I'm going to turn it down. If he doesn't move, then I'm going to turn him up. Right, buddy? Break. So I'm going to keep overlaying the leash, stim, verbal command, all three at the same time. So he's at 13. Come. Come. Good boy. Good boy. Break. Yes. Yeah, shake off that stress. Yes. What? Huh? What is it? All right. So he's watching me. He's paying a lot of attention. I'm going to go ahead and swap to a 12-foot leash instead of a 6-foot. Oh my goodness. Give me that. So I'm going to start to phase out my leash pressure now. I still have the leash as a backup. So I've been overlaying leash, tap, verbal, all three at the same time. Now I'm going to try to just get him to come and move to me off of the tap and the verbal only. But I still have my leash as a backup. Come. Good boy. Good boy. Break. What? What? Yeah, we don't have any treats today. Come. Good boy. Break. Good boy. Come. Good boy. So you see how he moves to me? He's still wagging his tail. He doesn't actually see this as a negative because it's not. I'm just moving him.
So here's the wild part. I had Rooster coming off leash in 3.5 minutes. My video team actually said, hey Ryan, that actually looked too easy. Could you maybe try it with another dog? Do we have a harder dog you could use? Because that actually looked too easy. So I grabbed a Husky. But the Husky was actually coming off leash in 2.5 minutes. So yeah, I've been training dogs now for 17 years, but it's not just me. Every dog trainer in our Tip Top network, they're all doing that with the majority of dogs. With most dogs, everyone in the Tip Top family is starting an off-leash recall in just 5 to 10 minutes. Our method works. If we do a consult with you and we think your dog's the right fit for us, this is exactly what we walk you through during that initial in-home consultation. And once you see it in action with your dog, you'll understand the difference of what we do. You'll see that what we do is real, it's repeatable, and results-driven. Most people today using e-collars, they're winging it. They got no system. They have no clear communication with clients and no real understanding of how dogs learn. And that's why we've built a national reputation at Tip Top Canine. Because we train professionally, we train consistently, and we train in a way that actually makes sense to both the dog and the owner. If you're ready to experience the difference, book your $1 first lesson today with a Tip Top Canine location near you. Click the link below, fill out the form, and let us show you what's possible in your home with your dog.